People often think that when relationships fail, it's because love disappeared. But that's rarely true. Love rarely vanishes overnight. What disappears first is conversation. Then understanding. Then the courage to say, I am hurting. By the time love starts to fade, it has already been wounded countless times, in silences, in unspoken words, in moments passed without notice. This is not a story about bad people. This is a story about two good people who waited too long to speak. This is the story of Daniel and Sophia. Daniel was the kind of man who believed love was proven by responsibility. By long hours, by sacrifices unseen, by enduring pressure without complaint. He thought that if he provided enough, if he carried the weight of life without faltering, love would naturally flourish. He never learned that love also demands vulnerability. Sophia, on the other hand, believed love was proven by connection. By being seen, heard, and understood. She believed that sharing emotions, noticing small changes in one another, and listening without judgment were the foundation of lasting love. She was expressive, patient, and emotionally intuitive. Their meeting was accidental. A delayed flight. Two strangers sharing an airport bench. Sophia was lost in a book she had already read twice. Daniel noticed the worn pages and asked why she kept rereading it. She looked up, smiled gently, and said, "Some stories understand you better the second time." That answer stayed with him, as if her words had bypassed his mind and touched his heart directly. From that day, their lives began to intersect. Their relationship grew slowly. Long conversations over coffee, shared laughter during evening walks, silent understanding in crowded rooms. They learned each other's routines, habits, and fears. It felt comfortable, safe, and natural. For both, that comfort was as close to forever as they had ever imagined. They married after 2 years. Not because they rushed, but because being apart felt unnatural. Their wedding was small, intimate, filled with warm smiles and hopeful hearts. They promised to communicate, to forgive, to be present. For a while, those promises held. The first year was warm, imperfect, but warm. Late night talks in bed. Shared breakfasts on lazy mornings. Cooking together on weekends. Laughter over inside jokes that no one else understood. Daniel provided stability. Sophia provided emotional warmth. Together, it felt balanced. But life has a way of testing even the strongest foundations. Daniel's work demanded longer hours. He traveled for projects, stayed late at the office, attended endless meetings. Sophia noticed subtle changes, missed dinners, delayed messages, distracted eyes. She adjusted, waited patiently, and told herself it was temporary. Daniel assumed she understood. He assumed love would survive distance. It did, for a while. Then small things began to grow. Missed calls turned into ignored texts. Short, distracted replies became the norm. Dinner conversations became functional, focused only on tasks and logistics. The laughter that once filled their home was replaced by polite nods and quiet sighs. Sophia tried to speak. She said softly, "I miss you." Daniel replied, "I'm doing everything for us." "Don't you see that?" She said, "I feel alone." He replied, "Things are stressful. I can't focus on that right now." Each time, love was present, but neither understood what the other truly needed. Daniel believed he was proving love through actions. Sophia needed attention and presence. Misunderstanding became their shadow. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Silence became the third character in their home, always present, patient, cold. It listened to their arguments, observed their love, noted the gaps in their communication, and waited for one crack that neither wanted to show. Sophia started journaling. Late at night, she poured words onto paper she could not say aloud. She wrote about loneliness, disappointment, longing, and hope. Daniel, buried in work, carried his own silent weight, unaware that the woman he loved felt invisible. One evening, Sophia prepared a dinner, candles lit, music soft. She hoped it would remind him of the closeness they once shared. Hours passed. Daniel called briefly, barely audible over the chaos of his work, and said, "Running late." That single line crushed her silently. She ate alone, tears blurring the candlelight. When Daniel returned home, exhausted and apologetic, he barely noticed her presence. She smiled politely. That smile carried more pain than any argument could. Silence had spoken louder than their love ever had. They passed each other at home, inches apart, emotionally miles away. Their home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a quiet battlefield. Every day, small moments piled up, ignored gestures, unanswered questions, subtle resentment. And yet, love lingered, hidden beneath layers of fatigue, expectation, and unspoken fear. Then came the first wake-up call. Sophia fainted at work. Tests revealed fatigue and a minor health issue, but it was enough to bring reality crashing in. Daniel, terrified for her, realized how fragile life, and love, could be. He stayed by her side, attended every appointment, listened to every concern. For the first time, he understood the silent burdens she had carried for months, perhaps years. Their conversations started to change, slowly, painfully. Apologies were made, not just words, but actions to prove commitment. They attended therapy sessions. They learned to pause before responding, to listen without defending, to express feelings without fear. Slowly, small moments of connection returned. Breakfasts together, walks without phones, evenings with music and conversation. The laughter returned, tentative but genuine. Trust was being rebuilt, one honest moment at a time. Yet scars remained, invisible, but tangible. The memory of neglect, of silence stretching too long, of moments wasted in misunderstanding, they were etched in their hearts. One night, Daniel whispered, "I don't want to lose you." Sophia looked at him, tears glistening, and whispered, "I don't want to lose you either, but I need you to really see me. Not just exist with me, but feel with me." For the first time, they truly heard each other. Words were no longer just words, presence mattered. Silence was no longer allowed to grow unchecked. And in that moment, a new chapter of their love began. Months passed. The quiet in Daniel and Sophia's home became louder than words. They were together, yet apart, sharing the same walls but living in different emotional worlds. Their home was filled with familiar objects, photographs, and furniture, yet it felt strange, like they were guests in each other's lives. Sophia's mornings became ritualistic. Wake up, make coffee, prepare for work, leave, return late at night, and repeat. She spoke less, smiled less, and slowly, learned to hide her emotions behind politeness. Daniel, on the other hand, immersed himself in work, believing that providing for the family was the ultimate proof of love. He didn't realize that love also required attention, understanding, and presence. Even when they sat at the same table for dinner, the silence was thick. They talked about trivial matters, bills, errands, schedules. But the heart-to-heart conversations were gone. Each word exchange felt measured, cautious, and incomplete. The emotional distance was growing, quietly, painfully. Sophia began writing in her journal at night. She poured out all the words she couldn't say aloud. Her loneliness, her frustrations, her fear of being invisible. She wrote about the way Daniel didn't notice the small signs of her exhaustion, the quiet tears she shed alone, the longing for a touch that acknowledged her pain. Each word was a whisper of her heart, a silent plea for connection. Meanwhile, Daniel carried his own invisible weight. Stress from work, the pressure to succeed, the fear of failing as a husband, provider, and partner, he bottled it all inside. He assumed that by keeping himself strong, he was protecting Sophia. But strength without vulnerability built walls, not bridges. Then came the evening that would change everything. Sophia had prepared a special dinner, hoping to reconnect, to spark even a small flame of the intimacy they once shared. Candles were lit. Music played softly. She waited. Hours passed. Daniel called once from work, running late. That single line crushed her silently. She ate alone, tears blurring the candlelight, her heart heavy with the realization that love could survive hunger, arguments, and distance, but not neglect. When Daniel finally came home, he barely noticed her presence. Exhausted, apologetic, he assumed a brief apology would suffice. Sophia smiled politely. That smile carried more pain than any argument could. Silence had spoken louder than their love ever had. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Silence became a third character in their lives, present, patient, and cold. It observed their arguments, monitored their love, and waited for a crack neither wanted to show. Their love wasn't gone, but it was buried under layers of unspoken grievances, assumptions, and tired hearts. Sophia's health began to decline. Fatigue, headaches, minor collapses, small signs that something was wrong physically and emotionally. Daniel noticed, too late. Hospital visits revealed nothing fatal, but enough to shake them both. For the first time in years, Daniel realized how fragile life could be, and how fragile love had become in their neglect. Counseling sessions began, not because they were beyond repair, but because they had waited too long to truly communicate. Each session was draining, raw, and painful. They learned to listen without interruption, to speak without defensiveness, and to acknowledge emotions that had been ignored for far too long. Slowly, tentative steps of reconciliation emerged. Breakfasts together, walks without distractions, quiet conversations before bed. They began rebuilding, one moment at a time. Laughter returned in small doses, smiles became genuine, and the walls between them began to crack. But the scars of the past remained. Every small argument carried traces of months of misunderstanding. Every silence reminded them of lost opportunities. Yet, for the first time, they were present for each other, consciously choosing to notice, to listen, and to respond. One rainy evening, Daniel found Sophia sitting by the window, staring at the drops sliding down the glass. He sat beside her, hesitated, then said softly, "I don't want to lose you." Sophia looked at him, her eyes glistening, and whispered, "I don't want to lose you either, but I need you to see me. Not just live beside me, but feel with me." For the first time, Daniel understood. Presence mattered more than grand gestures. Listening mattered more than providing. Love was not only in action, but in understanding, acknowledging, and connecting. The tension between them had not disappeared overnight, but it had started to melt. Every touch, every glance, every conversation became intentional. They had learned that ignoring the small cracks would eventually collapse the strongest bond. Then, one evening, Daniel collapsed unexpectedly. A sudden, heart-related scare, panic, hospital lights, fear-filled words from doctors, everything condensed into a moment that reminded them both of life's fragility. Sophia held his hand, whispered every apology, every word of love she had held back over months. Daniel, weak but conscious, squeezed her hand and whispered, "I hear you now. I always should have." That night, lying in the hospital bed, they realized that love wasn't perfect, but it could survive if nurtured carefully. They understood that silence could kill a relationship faster than anger ever could, and presence could heal wounds no time could erase. Recovery was long and fragile. Daniel adjusted his work, prioritized home, and allowed himself to be vulnerable. Sophia, encouraged by his sincerity, began expressing her needs without fear. Slowly, their connection strengthened, growing from fragile threads into a rope capable of holding the weight of life's challenges. They didn't return to their old lives. They became something better. A couple fully present for each other, aware that love required attention, patience, and courage. Life has a cruel way of testing even the strongest bonds. Daniel and Sophia had rebuilt parts of their relationship, but the past months of silence, misunderstanding, and emotional distance had left scars that ran deep. Every moment of peace was tinged with the memory of neglect, every laugh shadowed by unspoken resentment. Daniel was aware now, painfully aware, of what he had lost by staying silent for so long. He could no longer pretend that long hours at work and financial stability alone could sustain love. He had learned, in the most difficult ways, that presence, empathy, and listening were the true pillars of a relationship. Sophia, on the other hand, had discovered her own strength. She realized that vulnerability was not weakness. Speaking up, asking to be seen, demanding connection, these were not flaws, but necessities for her heart to survive. She loved Daniel deeply, but she understood that love alone could not heal months of emotional neglect. One evening, after a particularly difficult week, Daniel came home to find Sophia sitting quietly in the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows on her face. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but her eyes told a different story. Daniel sensed the weight of unspoken words. "I can't keep pretending everything is okay," Sophia said, her voice steady but trembling slightly. "I need more than words now. I need action. I need to feel that you see me, that you hear me, that you're here with me, not just beside me." Daniel's heart sank. He realized, in that instant, that the past months of trying to fix things superficially had only pushed them further apart. I didn't know," he whispered. "I thought I was doing enough. I thought love meant providing, protecting, making life easier." Sophia shook her head. "Love means presence, Daniel. Love means noticing, understanding, and being vulnerable together. It's not about what you provide. It's about what we share." Tears filled Daniel's eyes. For the first time, He allowed himself to fully feel the pain of months of neglect, not just his own guilt, but the hurt he had caused the person he loved most. He reached for Sophia's hand, and she did not pull away. They talked for hours that night, not just about what went wrong, but about the small moments of connection they had lost. They recalled first dates, shared dreams, and quiet nights that had once felt magical. Each memory was a reminder of the love that still existed beneath the layers of hurt and silence. But life was not done testing them. A few weeks later, Daniel suffered a serious health scare. A sudden collapse at work brought him to the hospital. Tests revealed stress-related heart issues that could have been fatal if ignored. Sophia stayed by his side the entire time, holding his hand, whispering reassurances, and crying silently for the months of emotional distance that had preceded this moment. In the sterile hospital room, with machines beeping and doctors moving around, Daniel realized the fragility of life and love. He saw Sophia's unwavering presence and understood that love required more than promises. It required daily commitment, attention, and courage to confront discomfort. During his recovery, Daniel dedicated himself entirely to rebuilding their relationship. He adjusted his work schedule, attended counseling sessions, and allowed himself to express vulnerability in ways he had never done before. Sophia, in turn, practiced forgiveness, not the easy kind, but the kind that acknowledged hurt while still choosing to love. They began to create new rituals. Morning coffee together, evening walks without distractions, conversations that went beyond logistics, and small gestures of care that reminded them of each other's humanity. Slowly, laughter returned, genuine and warm. Smiles replaced polite nods. Touch became a language of reassurance, not obligation. Yet, the scars of the past months were not erased. Each disagreement reminded them of what silence and neglect could do. But instead of withdrawing, they had learned to confront the discomfort. They had learned that the key to sustaining love was not perfection, but presence and honesty. One quiet evening, as the rain tapped gently against the windows, Daniel handed Sophia a handwritten letter. His handwriting, slightly shaky, carried the weight of everything he had learned. He wrote about the silence that had nearly destroyed them, about the mistakes he had made, about the love that had persisted despite distance and neglect. He asked her to remember the moments of connection, to hold on to hope, and to continue building their life together with intention. Sophia read the letter slowly, tears streaming down her face. Each word felt like a bridge connecting the fractured parts of their hearts. It did not erase the pain, nor did it rewrite the past. But it reminded them both that love, when nurtured, could survive even the darkest storms. From that night onward, they made a silent promise, not to let life sweep them apart, not to let misunderstanding or silence erode their bond again. They had learned the hardest lesson of all, that love is not just a feeling, but a choice, every single day, in both small and large ways. And though the past could never be undone, they chose to move forward, together, aware of fragility, but committed to resilience. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. Thank you for supporting Real Life USA Stories.